initial reaction is to stick to the process and, look after the people, make sure everyone's on board, and look after the boat. That's the initial reaction, and go through the process. But once you get through it, you get back up and running again. You actually understand the enormity of the job all the skippers in this race have got. Skippers in all sort of boats in any race have got enormous responsibility with the welfare of the people on board.
Plenty of action at Misadventure spread out among the Volvo Ocean Racing fleet. Now, 1 week into this incredible leg through the South Pacific, and that was a clip there from Sung Kai Scallywag, who did a Chinese jibe, one of the sailors' worst nightmares, in the middle of the night. We'll be coming back and explaining more about that later, but we'll also be talking to Caffari on Turn the Tide on Plastic, and Pablo Arate from Mafre, who will be talking about their misadventures as well. But first, let's go back to Sung Kai and get the reaction.
Yeah, but no one got hurt. None of the boats broken. So yeah, it could have ended worse. But I suppose if you're trying to jibe or something, or lose someone over the side, you'd rather try and jibe.
Well, if all over the shot, they're dead, right?
Yeah. So one of those things. Live and learn. And hopefully won't let it happen again.
So that was the raw, in the moment reaction from Nipper, Ben Piggott, and indeed skipper David Witt. But just a few moments before we went on air, I dialed into Libby Greenhalgh, navigator, to get more details on what happened.
Last 24 hours, I think it's all been pretty eventful so far, but now probably for us, the most eventful thing was the Chinese jibe the other night. So I guess probably about 24 hours ago, we were scooting along the ice gate. Everyone was fortunately up, getting ready for a potential jibe when we got headed, and so we were going along next to it, and then spun into a Chinese jibe, as they call it, and were very much pinned over for quite a while, and had to sort that out. So it's not ideal, but I think in a way everyone has to do it at some point. But yeah, we came out of it relatively quickly, and nothing broken, which was the biggest thing. And as I said to everyone, well, we thought we were thinking about driving anyway, so that's one way of doing it.
Can you talk us through what that feels like and looks like, both for those inside in their bunk, potentially, and also for those in the cockpit?
Yeah, so I mean, basically, the Chinese jibe is just an unplanned jibe. I'd say you're not letting stay. I mean, it can be quite dangerous, and if you get it really wrong, you can break a lot of gear. But basically, you just jibe when you're not planning on, and so your keel's the wrong side and your sails are still the wrong side. So you end up on the opposite jibe with in this case, we had our throw up, so that was still pinned round. So then was effectively holding us to leeward, and obviously our keel was to leeward, so then we've got to get that back up to try and help pop us up. But probably more importantly is getting the runner on, which sort of holds the rig up, and you need to get the new windward runner on before you can let the old one off, before you can let the main out, which again is also pinning you down. So I mean, to wind the main on to not damage the buttons there, and to then help with everything. And I was down below. In fact, there was only Whisk and I down below, because we were getting ready to jibe, and we were watching the nav screen to see how close we were going to go to the ice gate. And yeah, I mean, it was actually near on impossible for me to get out of the boat from down below, because it was so high. I had to get a bit of a leg up from Whitty, because I couldn't actually climb the mountain to get out the hatch, because I'm quite sure I couldn't reach any of the handholds. So yeah, I mean, and then obviously on deck, you're at 90 degrees trying to, it's a lot harder to wind a pedestal when you're effectively just hanging off it. So yeah, it's pretty tough, but everyone did a pretty sterling job and got it sorted and back under control, and we're up and off relatively quickly.
Having had a runner block blow up recently, and then the Chinese jibe, it means that you've lost some miles in the last couple of days. Given the fact there's plenty more breeze coming on in the next couple of days, do you see any more opportunities to make back miles on the fleet?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last couple of scares we feel with our position at the moment, we haven't had to put any jibes in, and yeah, I think Brunel extended on the whole fleet a bit, but ultimately I think we closed a little bit on the fleet, and despite those two incidences, I don't think we would have lost a few miles, but I think we were expecting them to cost us a lot more than they did. Our main mile loss has been from our positioning early on in the leg, unfortunately. But yeah, I think there's a stack load more miles to go. I think we've just broken the 2,000 miles to Cape Horn. From there, so we're kind of just over a third of the way through, and there's going to be plenty of opportunity, I think, more so from Cape Horn onwards than probably between now and Cape Horn. I think the strong breeze will mean potential for other people to have similar instances, or you never know what might happen in terms of breakage and just keeping the boat safe. I think that's probably going to be the next goal as the wind builds.
Libby gave you a good in-depth view there of what a Chinese jibe is involved. Well, first of all, let me wind it back a little bit and explain why it's called that. You remember those Chinese junks with sort of big, square, oblong sails? That's actually the origin of this name. It's nothing to do with Chinese people or the nationality or anything like that. It's just that they had these funny sails that could sometimes jibe in a peculiar way, that they were so square that the top would sort of twist off and jibe and the bottom would be another way. Basically, it was a big mess. And now offshore sailors like myself use it as shorthand to say a big mess. It should actually be called a crash jibe. However, in that clip that we just saw from Libby, she sort of went through and explained a little bit about what happened, but in case you at home got a little bit lost in her explanation, I've got a beautiful demonstration right here. So, this is a standard tower fan. Sadly, I cannot wind it up to 11, so it's not quite a Southern Ocean storm, but more of a gentle breeze, but it will serve the purpose. So, if you can imagine that we have a Volvo 65 sailing downwind a little bit like this. You've got the boom out to the side because they're sailing downwind, and then the jib or a Jenica at the front. So, they're cruising along like this, and then Ben Piggott or any other sailor is on the helm, and they freak out a little bit. So in a big surf, they sort of bear away, bear away, bear away, bear away, bear away, until they're running dead downwind. A little bit of a kick, too much, and then you can watch the leech, the back end of the sail here, and see what happens. You can start to see that it starts to kick back a little bit, and then finally, boom, that's the jibe. However, the running backstays are still on, which means that the boat gets pinned on its side because the sail here cannot go from one side to the other like it does with a normal jibe. So the end result is this. Sorry, buddy. Anyway, pretty dramatic stuff. So you've got the mainsail here pinned against the backstays, and all of the cables are going all over the place. It's a big mess. What complicates things on a Volvo 65 is that you've got the swing keel. Now imagine that this was over on the other side, so normally providing good righting moment. Now what happens is when you do an accidental jibe like this, and the boat leans over, oh dearie me, I'm losing rudders and all things, that's canted down, which means that as the boat is sideways, the keel is sticking down into the water, making the boat completely stable. In that sort of almost capsized state. So what the sailors need to do on board to clean up this mess is that they need to bring on the new backstay to secure the mast, and so they do that by winching that on. So you've got the new cables here holding up the mast, and then they can finally ease off the old backstay, allow the mainsail to rotate completely from one side to the other, and then taking off some of that pressure allows the boat to sort of stand up. Whoop, that one's really made a mess of it. Stand up and keep on going. Now, as Libby said, it took them sort of more than 10 minutes of the boat sort of on its side and drifting along with the sails flapping and getting messy like that. So, Chinese jibe or crash jibe, whatever you want to call it, it's a huge mess. However, in case you want to see more action, we've been digging through the archives to give you a bit of a special treat. Hang on to the edge of your seat. This is going to get wild. Zooming in onto the virtual eye tracker now, you can see that the boats are down, approaching the middle of the Pacific and Point Nemo, but the key thing is that in the last 48 hours they have been just relentlessly bouncing off that red line, that ice exclusion zone that the race committee put in place to keep the boats up and away from the dangerous icebergs that are currently coming off Antarctica. But keep your eyes fixed, not on Sungai out the back, but on Mafre. You can see that they are just stretching, losing miles all the time relative to Team Brunel, and that's because they've got a technical problem on board. For more details, I spoke to Watch Captain Pablo Arati for more information.
Suddenly the mast track came off of the rig. We don't know why exactly, but it had a hard time in some maneuvers. So probably it got damaged and suddenly it ripped off a few meters. So yeah, that was a shame because it's a quite risky one because you can, or either lose the mast and then the mainsail is not set properly. So at the beginning we did a small repair so we could sail with 2 reefs, and now we try to develop that and try to be able to sail normal from here to the end. No? But so far it has been quite difficult. We're working on it.
Now, Pablo, can you tell us a little bit more about the breakage itself? Did it happen when you were taking a reef or when you were jibing, and how many meters of it came off?
Yeah, well, it was pretty much sailing a straight line and we were taking a reef, so it wasn't any load there. And suddenly we saw like 2 meters of the track ripped off. But the problem is connected to 4 more meters, so it can't come off all the way, so that's what we're trying to avoid. And the problem is in that section there are two intermediate cars plus a batten car. So the batten car especially is putting a lot of strength on the track, and yeah, we're trying to find a solution. We ratchet it up with the ratchet straps that we use for the sails. We use it to lock the track on the mast, and that was the first solution. And now we have to find something else so we can use the mainsail all the way, But it's not going to be easy. We didn't find a solution yet.
Are you relaying crew members, so it's not always the same person climbing and being injured?
In this case we have Nieti, and Nieti is the most experienced guy climbing up the mast, and is the only one at the moment going up because it's so dangerous, and he took the role, and actually he's the boat captain. He's the best to do repairs and these things, so it's perfect because he is the best to climb out the mast and best to repair things, so he's the one doing it. So when he is on watch we try to use him, and sometimes even when he is off watch. He has been, I think, the last 10 hours with no sleep, and now he's trying to get some sleep.
Looking a little bit further down the road, can you sort of project forward as to whether you need to stop in Ushuaia or in the lee of another island, or do you think you can make this a running repair?
We still have like 20 hours till a lot more breeze comes, like 40 knots, and we will try to fix or to do something before those 20 hours. We're not thinking onto stop on Ushuaia or any other place. We will try to avoid that as much as possible. We know if it's something wrong, maybe we have to stop on a lee of the island, but we will try to avoid it, because the problem of these boats is if you stop, at the end is you lose the leg, no? So
Exactly.
So we will try to avoid any stop, and we will right now trying to find a solution, and if not, of course we have to do it at the end, because the mast is taking risk of ourselves. We will do, but we will try to full on the whole leg.
Is everybody else holding up?
The people is just trying to find solutions, and at the moment it's not heads down. We're trying to keep it up and try to do our best and don't give up. So we'll see what happens.
Best wishes there for Mapfre that they're able to deal with that really challenging problem as soon as possible and without getting anybody hurt. Remember, on leg 3, AkzoNobel had a very similar problem and it took them way out the back. And so we hope that they can resolve the problem quickly. Now, just to give you some idea of what he was talking about, there's a track on my beautiful broken model here, running up the back side of the mast. And so this mainsail here clips onto that with little sliders. And so having that mast track comes off means that the luff of the sail can basically sort of flap around like that, and it becomes really problematic, particularly because the battens can then start slamming into the mast, and that could create bigger problems and potentially dismasting. So in order to stop that, what they've taken these ratchet straps, put them around the mast, and then sort of crank them up tight to hold the track onto the mast. However, the problem by putting a band around the mast like this means that you can no longer put reefs in and take them out. So that's clearly a big problem, particularly at Point Nemo. Now, you've seen this on the tracker and just wanted to point out exactly what it is because it's in all of the blogs at the moment. Point Nemo, well, it's in the middle of the Pacific. And so you can see there it's sort of halfway between New Zealand, where they started, and Chile, where they're going. And then to the north of them, they've got a sandbank. And then to the south of them, they've got Antarctica. So they really are in the middle of nowhere. Why is it called Point Nemo? Well, sadly, it's not because of this little critter here. So this is Disney movie Finding Nemo. Beautiful film, very cute, but sadly not relevant here. The reason it's called Point Nemo is after this handsome chappie here. He is Captain Nemo, who is the captain of the Nautilus in Jules Verne book 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. The reason that he got this most isolated place on Earth named after him is because he was notoriously antisocial. So the other name for Point Nemo is the Pole of Inaccessibility, which really sort of sums things up. It is the most isolated point on Earth. And somebody who's been there a lot is Dee Caffari.
It's great to be back, and we've been quite well looked after. It hasn't delivered any surprises, but we know we've got a big system to go, and that's always the case. You're always going to get nailed by something before you get to Cape Horn, and ours is to come, but it's been a quick trip and so far a safe trip.
Can you talk us through the evolution and the sort of growing up of your team from leg 3 to now?
Leg 3 is always a baptism of fire. You come out of Cape Town straight into it, and it lasts for 3 weeks solid. And with this leg, having had that experience, the guys were a lot more confident going somewhere. They knew how cold and wet it can be. They knew how windy it could be. They'd driven the boat in those conditions. So they came in with much more confidence. We're much happier on our boat setups now. And also this leg is very different. You had a week's warm up, and then you get a week of the windy stuff, and then you go to Brazil. So I kind of broke it down to much more manageable trunks, and they went in with a really positive attitude, and that's reflected in our performance on the water. But I haven't really changed my decision-making process. I'm always probably more prudent than others, and I make sensible decisions to reduce the amount of manoeuvres we do in windy conditions and try and sail the boat sensibly so that we can still sail at full performance, and it's obviously working.
Can you talk to us about what it's like maintaining hi Chuck, man, woman and machine all at the same time? That you've been maybe reducing a few jibes to sail further north, away from the worst of the winds and the ice exclusion zone.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the fatigue when you do multiple jibes. It's all about managing expectations. So I kind of committed to them, this is what we're planning to do, this is what I want buy-in for, and everyone's given me 100%. So I couldn't ask for more from the team. And, when they see another boat crossing so closely, as we've had several occasions today, it gives them a lot more momentum to keep going and keep delivering. So I'm very lucky in that respect. But it is a balance, and if you get fatigue, then you're going to make bad decisions, and then accidents happen. My guys have been really on the case and eating, trying to sleep, trying to drink, and trying to sail the boat fast.
One of the big things about today is the fact that you're charging past Point Nemo. Can you talk to us about the sort of the weight of responsibility that adds to the skipper's shoulders?
It's quite funny. We talked about Point Nemo quite a bit on the boat, and we laugh because it's actually only really relevant if you're the only one down here, because we normally say that the closest person to us at Point Nemo is the astronaut in the International Space Station.
But actually it's your buddy 6 miles away,
Ocean
right?
Races, it's the boat. Exactly, it's the boat right next door to us that we can see. So when you're sailing with the best sailors in the world, you're in pretty good company if something was to happen at Point Nemo. But, it does bring home just how remote this other nation is. But we're charging across to Cape Horn, and then it just gets warmer every day after that. Cape
Horn in 3 to 4 days. Can you talk to us about the coming days? What's it going to be like as you make that final run in?
Well, the next few days is, the big push of the big weather system before we get to the Horn. So the wind's going to go up. We're going to have our windy 24 hours. If we get through that with the boat on its feet, then we're good, and we just keep pushing to the Horn. This system will take us all the way to Cape Horn, so it's about not making any mistakes in that weather system, looking after people in the boat, and potentially it looks like quite a nice rounding for the guys. So that's a huge kind of pivotal landmark for them, and it'd be quite a monumental day for all of them to round Cape Horn for the first time.
Hang on tight, and we look forward to catching up with you in a couple of days.
Cool, thanks, Conrad.
Frankly, fantastic to see Caffari and Turn the Tide on Plastic ripping it up at the front of the race there. So well done, guys. Now, this leg, is the queen stage, is the creme de la creme, is the cherry on the cake. It is whatever you want to use to explain it. This is what the Volvo Ocean Race is all about. Back in 1973, when it was the Whitbread Ocean race around the world, the sailors were sort of setting off on a voyage of discovery, uncertain as to what they were going to find down there. Now we know, and it has become a crucial part of the race. And myself, as a racing sailor, I yearn to get back there. Anyway, incredibly dramatic images and sending back from our tireless crew of onboard reporters. Enjoy this the snapshot of all of the action across the fleet. We'll be back with you with a quick fix tomorrow morning, and indeed the Daily Show following up.
We are full downwind and we have many jibe, and that's the most complicated part, jibing in this condition.
One of the most remote people on Earth right now.
It's a pretty impressive place from when you're on the water.
Am I scared? Yeah. No. I'm a little bit bored and friggin' cold.